Hey y'all, welcome back to Truth by Bella. It's your girl Isabella here. So, I want to say I am really glad for this conversation because this is one of those topics that always stirs something in people. Every time I talk about dating, discernment, relationships, and involving God in the process, it opens up a deeper reflection, not just for the people listening, but for me as well. And honestly, that's because dating is one of those areas where a lot of people, well, I say a lot, want clarity, but there's also so much confusion that comes with dating as well. There's so much different opinions, many different cultural norms, unspoken expectations, and so many people carrying wounds, hopes, assumptions, desires, and disappointments into the way that they connect with others. So, in this episode has really been sitting on my heart for a while. And lately, I've been reading this book called Single, Dating, Engaged, Married. So many aspects of this book spoke to me as I was reading it. And when I was reading this book, I was like, okay, this is the perfect time because I was on the plane traveling and I just had that time to process my thoughts, afterthoughts, not in a dramatic way, but just a soft, quiet reflection. This is the kind where you read a paragraph and you have to stop because it pulls something that you've seen before, you've felt before, or something you've been trying to find the language for. And that's exactly what this book did here for me. It wasn't just informative, it was confrontational in a healthy way. It challenged so many ideas that normal people carry about dating, especially in this modern tendency to create an in between category where people want to feel comfort, access, emotional benefits of something serious without the true weight of accountability, commitment, and covenant. And what I just said, okay, let's really talk about this here. So today's episode is not just a book review, but is more of a reflection episode that I want you to definitely walk with me. I want to talk about things that stood out to me and why they stood out and how I think they connect to our real life, especially in the culture where we're dating can mean 10 different things depending on who you're asking. Because that phrase sounds simple, but it carries a lot of weight. So for some people, when we hear we're dating, means we're intentionally getting to know someone with marriage in mind. For others, it means exclusivity. For others, it means emotional comfort. And for some, it means access granted. And for others, it means I want benefits of being close without the responsibility of a true commitment. So that's where I think a lot of the confusion starts from there. So if you've ever had asked questions when it comes to dating, titles, discernment, purity, love versus lust, and what does it really mean involving God in your relational life in a way that is honest and wise, this episode here is really for you. So let's get into it. One of the biggest ideas that stood out to me when I was reading this book is the challenge of how people treat dating. A lot of people do not treat the dating like a process. They treat it as a status, a place to settle into, a title to wear, in a category that provides emotional comfort, a sense of security, and often a lot of access. And if I'm being real with you, it's such a common thing now. People say, that's my boyfriend, that's my girlfriend. And sometimes what they really mean underneath is that this is the person that now owes me a certain level of attention, priority, access, consistency, and we're exclusive. And that really made me pause because one thing that the book points out is that once people create this separate category, this in between space, and all these unspoken rules that start showing up, such as why didn't you text me today? Why didn't you tell me where you're going? Why didn't you make plans with me first? Why didn't you check in with me? I thought we are supposed to be doing this. I thought you're supposed to be acting like this. And the truth is, a lot of people step into relationship expectations that they never really discuss. They just assume things just kind of roll into that aspect. And this is where things start getting messy because assumption is a fragile foundation. If two people are operating with two different definitions of what dating means, And that's when confusion is almost guaranteed to show up. And I think that's one of the most important things that this topic reveals is that people often use the same label while carrying totally different meanings on what they're saying. So one person may think that dating means evaluation. Another person may think that it means entitlement. Another person may think that it means I'm getting to know you more with us praying and having discernment, while the other person, on the other hand, means that I just have more access to you and I have more emotional rights over whatever is happening here. And that's when the gap in this aspect here really matters. It matters because a title alone cannot sustain a relationship. A label cannot replace clarity. A label cannot replace maturity. A label can definitely not replace communication. And one thing a label does not do is replace the actual commitment that both parties need to put in. And I think that sometimes people want comfort without being able to say that they have somebody without really doing the deeper work of asking themselves, what are we truly building here? What does this mean? What are our values? Is this actually healthy? And is God even in this relationship? Because I feel like that's a real question that, especially myself as a believer, loves to ask. And because a lot of modern dating seems to want to have emotional reward of marriage without the covenant weight of marriage, people are emotionally intertwined, heavily involved, physically entangled, deeply attached, and yet still operating in this undefined gray area where nobody really wants to fully acknowledge on what is and isn't actually there. And I think that's the part on why so many people I know, and sometimes even myself, gets hurt. Because dating was never meant to be a place where you hide from clarity. It's meant to be a process where clarity grows. And I love that distinction because it reminds me that dating is not supposed to be where I just go and just sit in the comfort of being chosen, but it's where I go to observe, pray, evaluate, discern, and be honest. Not become paranoid, not hypocritical, but honest. And I think that's a much healthier posture. Another point that stayed with me with the idea of goal of dating, not to make someone conform to a standard that you've imposed, but the goal is to really assess who they are and discern whether you two are actually a fit. And I believe that this is definitely a mature perspective. And I honestly think that a lot of people, including you, need to hear this because most relationships and many relationships are built around editing. And what I mean by editing is trying to change the person, trying to train the person, reshape the person and their mindset, force accountability where there really isn't much, and even trying to find that are we even compatible when there probably isn't much of that as well. So let me be clear, having standards is not a problem. Standards are healthy, necessary, and can protect you. But there is a difference between having standards and trying to mold somebody into them. Dating is supposed to it reveals characters, patterns, habits, maturity, values, and compatibility or a lack thereof. But I think there's a freedom in that because what it means is that I don't have to force what is not naturally flowing in truth. I do not need to manipulate someone into becoming my ideal person. I do not have to hold on to a potential harder than I held on to the reality. But all those parts really matter because a lot of heartbreak happens when people become more attached to who someone could be than who they actually are. And honestly, y'all, that is one of the most dangerous things when it comes to dating, when your fantasy becomes louder than the actual facts that are right in front of you. When your hope becomes louder than the honesty, when desire becomes louder than the discernment that you should be paying attention to. And I think that this book really challenged that. It reminds us that sometimes what you are seeing is just simply information, helpful information, but not a sign to perform harder, not a sign to prove yourself even more, not a sign to wait around while somebody becomes aligned someday. It's just information. Maybe this person's kind, but they're not consistent. Maybe this person is attractive, but they're not intentional. Maybe this person is just fun to be around, but they're not really grounded. The person may like companionship, but not really accountability. The person may be interested in me, but they're not really prepared to really be with me. And I think that's okay to acknowledge because not every mismatch is a tragedy. It's sometimes a clarity for us to have. And honestly, that thought can save a lot of people so much pain. And I want to be really specific about something because I think this is where people get stuck. There is a difference in choosing someone and being aligned with someone. And sometimes the clearest sign that you are not aligned is that little voice that whispers, not loud but persistent, that something's off. You probably can't articulate it. Maybe they're a good person, maybe they check a lot of boxes, but there's a feeling that's underneath that says, this is not expanding me, not challenging me. This is not making me feel more alive. And honestly, that's data, information. And I think that a lot of people dismiss this because we feel a guilt in dismissing a good person. But here's the truth, good is not the same as right. And choosing to stay in good when you're meant for something more aligned is actually a form of settling. It's settling for yourself, but it's also too unfair to the other person because when you're not fully in it, the other person can feel it. And they spend energy trying to win someone who is never going to fully choose them. So sometimes the most honest thing you can do is name it. Say, I care about you, but I'm not aligned with you for the long term. And it's not mean, but it's actually clarity that you're giving to yourself and the other person, and it honors both of you guys. Okay, this next part really hit hard for me. So, the idea of challenging that boyfriend and girlfriend label gives someone the right over another person's body, their time, decisions in life. If we're being honest, a lot of people move like it does. Like, you're mine now. I own you. I should have access to everything. I should be prioritized. I should be giving certain privileges. But honestly, no, that's not the case. A label does not mean ownership. The person's still a full individual before God. And it means that they still have agency, they have boundaries, they have a responsibility before God. They have a life that does not belong to you. And I think that this is a much needed correction because in the dating culture, possessiveness has often been romanticized. Control is often disguised as I care about you. Entitlement is softened with cute language, but love that honors God should not be rooted in possession. It should be rooted in honor, honesty, respect, stewardness, not ownership. And I think the one of the smartest question that a person can ask is, what do you mean when you say boyfriend or girlfriend? Because the label is not the issue itself, it's the meaning behind the label is what matters. Do you mean that I'm getting to know a person with sincerity, honor, and intention? Or do you mean that I now have more access, more emotional leverage, and more claim? Because those are two different meanings that I just spoke on. But honestly, I think so much dating hurt comes from people sharing the same title, but living two different definitions. One person says boyfriend while means shared direction. Another says boyfriend and actually means control. One says girlfriend means I care and am very intentional about you. Another says girlfriend means access and possessions. So definitions really matter. And if I can be honest with you, This section made me reflect on things I've seen in my own dating journey. I've come across men who seem ready for access, attention, closeness, and the benefit of having a woman in their life, but not really ready for the kind of relationship where they're being stretched, challenged, deepened, or even called higher. And that stood out to me because real love is not about what feels good to me. Real love costs something. It requires maturity, responsibility. It requires the ability to care for someone beyond what they can offer you physically, emotionally, and socially in a short term. But I've also had conversations with guy friends where I've asked them what were they looking for, or sometimes the first thing that my guy friends say are physical, right? So let me be fair. Attraction really does matter. It really does. And I'm not pretending that people don't have eyes, because we all do. We all notice what we're drawn to when we meet someone. But I think that there's a thin, blurred line at times between a healthy attraction and a flesh led desire, between appreciating the beauty and being drawn by appearance and wanting love versus a visual satisfaction, which we really need to make sure we know the difference between liking someone and lusting after what they represent physically. And I think this is when the honesty aspect really is important. Are you looking for someone to truly love, honor, and build with? Or are you mainly looking for someone who fits and excites your flesh? Because those are not the same thing. And it doesn't only apply to men, this applies to all of us because we all have to examine our motives when we're interacting with people. But I think that it's really important for us to name a lot of things that people want love while being led mostly by desire, convenience, ego, and probably even image. And that's why this statement that were said within the book really stayed with me. It says there was a difference between wanting someone and being ready to love a person well. And that's a whole word within itself. Okay, so this next section here is really important. So it spoke about on how introducing sex too early into dating can distort the evaluation process. And I need y'all to sit with that real quick because I really think that is such a powerful point because a lot of times when people talk about purity, they only frame it as rules, restrictions, and don't do this, don't do that. But this book highlighted something deeper that I think is really worth sitting with: clarity. And when sex enters a picture too early, it can deepen attachment before you even have enough information. Trust, discernment, whether this person is actually a healthy fit for you. That affects the body. Yes, it does. It also too affects your judgment. It affects the discernment, the emotional clarity that you have, and it honestly affects on how you assess what's in front of you. And I think that's a real conversation because so many people stay in weak relationships because the physical intimacy created a bond stronger than the actual compatibility. So when I hear the word purity in this context, I don't only hear restriction, but I hear protection, protection of your clarity, protection of your discernment, protection of your emotions, protection of your ability to evaluate honestly. And that is such a needed for reframing because sometimes people call what freedom is really actually confusion. Sometimes what feels good in the moment makes it harder to see clearly in the long run. And if dating is supposed to help us discern whether a person is truly a life partner, then clarity really matters. The friendship aspect really matters. Their character really matters. Your shared values really matter. And the peace also really matters. And actually, it's important for you to enjoy a person's company. It's not just solely about chemistry, but the chemistry can be loud and the compatibility needs to be much deeper when it comes to that there. One screenshot that I love, and it made a real sharp distinction between love and lust, is lust wants to be used. Love is willing to be sacrificed. Lust asks, what can I get? Love asks, how can I care? Lust is centered on self. Love is centered on the good of the other person. And this is a clear distinction because people sometimes call romance when it's really selfishness with attractive packaging. And people call something deep when it's really intense, or something loving when it's really just a desire without discipline. And this is why we have to be really careful when it comes to dating. Intensity doesn't mean intimacy. Desire is not always devotion. Stronger feelings does not always mean a stronger character. And I think that's why this conversation is really important, because in a culture where so much of physical closeness really is rushed and it really delays true commitment, people can bond deeply with someone they've never clearly discerned. And later on, they realize that, man, we're actually really not aligned. We do not really enjoy each other deeply. We're attached, but we're not really anchored. We're bonded, but we're not necessarily built well. And that's a sobering thought, and it makes me think on how important it is to be slow to speak and really ask deep questions like, do I really like this person beyond the attraction? Can I really trust this person? Do I really respect this person? Does the person really respect me? Do they really care about me? Can they honor me in any aspects? Can they handle me with care? Can they carry the weight of what they really say? And I always say this, that our words, our actions need to speak louder than our words. Because at times people may be drawn to your body, but do they really honor you as a whole person? So you need to really think about that and really reflect on that aspect. So there was one excerpt within the book that had me sitting back and really the honesty before God. Not the performance, not the fantasy, not the pressure, but being honest with God. This book really made me think deeply about what people mean when they say they want a relationship. Do they want a partnership, comfort, access, validation, control? A companionship without accountability? Or do they generally want to discern whether this person can love them in a healthy, honoring, and a God centered way? And that question continuously comes back to me. And I want to add something that I really think that's important, especially for people who find themselves in a situation where they're not sure. There is a cost to staying in a relationship that is not aligned. And sometimes people don't realize it much until later on. The cost isn't dramatic, but it's subtle. It's literally a slow compression of your own expansion. It's staying in boredom and calling it loyalty. It's tolerating mediocrity because the person's good and you feel guilty for wanting more. It's dimming your own light so theirs can shine brighter. It's accepting promises about future change and honestly hoping that it's going to be honored in the present reality. But here's the thing, the cost doesn't stop with you, it extends to the other person as well. Because when you stay despite the misalignment, you're teaching them that incompleteness is acceptable here. You're allowing them to think that they're getting a full reciprocal love when they're actually getting part of you. The doleful part, not the passionate part. That's not love, that's management. So sometimes when a person's good, and even when you're scared of being alone, even when you feel guilty, the most loving thing that you can do is actually leave, because you're making space for both of you guys to find the alignment somewhere else. So, what do I mean when I say I want love? What do I mean when I say I want intentionality? What do I mean when I say I want something that is God centered? Because it's easy to say the right words, but it takes maturity to slow down enough to let the dating reveal the truth. And one of the strongest things that this book stirred within me is a reminder that standards is not the same as entitlement. It's okay to have standards. It's okay to desire consistency. It is okay to want honesty, maturity, faith, and clarity, something that's beyond the surface level attraction. But it is not okay to use dating as a place to lay claim to someone that God has not given you covenant with. And that is an important distinction because I think that most people understood that had most people understood that. Let me correct myself on that. There would be a less confusion, less manipulation, less false pressure, and less avoidable heartbreaks. This conversation is helping me even become more honest with the kind of love that I respect. I don't want words that sound good. I don't want attraction with no depth. I don't want someone who likes the idea of me, the image of me, the body of me, or even the convenience of me. I want something with substance, someone that can handle the truth, handle boundaries, something that can handle honesty, accountability, something that sees love more than an access. It doesn't mean perfection, it means a posture for a person to have. Because so much of dating is not just about if a person checks off your boxes, it's about whether they have maturity, discipline, and a heart posture to love in a way that is healthy and God honoring. And that's what's been sitting with me the most. All right. So before I close out my episode here, I want to bring you guys into my break room moment for this episode here. So, dating should not be a place where we look for ownership. It should be a place where we practice discernment. Not every connection is meant for covenants. Not every label means safety. Not every spark means substance. Not every strong feeling means clear direction. Sometimes wisdom looks like slowing down enough to ask, what is this really? Is this producing something good in me? What is this revealing about them? What is this relationship revealing about me? Is God truly in the center? Because when God is in it, there should be honesty, there should be honor, there should be room for discernment, there should be care, not control, peace, not pressure. Maybe this is really a takeaway for today. Not everything that feels deep is truly safe. Not everything that looks promise is prepared. Not everything called love is actually love. So please guard your heart, but also to guard your clarity. Seek clarity if you've been dwelling too long in confusion, but really make sure to guard your heart. All right, you guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Truth by Bella. I really enjoyed reflecting on this book that I've been reading. And I think that it really challenges some very common dating mindsets in a way that's necessary, honest, and healthy. And I'm also glad for letting myself sit with these thoughts instead of rushing past them. Because reading this book while traveling and processing it in my quiet time really gave me a space to really feel where it really hits, where it challenges me, and also clarify a lot of things for me. If this episode really spoke to you, send it to someone who's been thinking deeply about dating, relationships, discernment, and what it truly means to keep God at the center of your relationships. And let me know if you want a part two because y'all know I can definitely go on about this topic here. And if you're interested in also too reading the book that I've been referring to, kindly reach out to me. I don't mind sharing as well. But anyways, y'all, until next time, stay honest, stay grounded, and stay close to God. I love y'all with the love of God. Have a blessed day. Bye.